Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to be making a video pertaining to my environmental science class. So, if you are a student in my environmental science class, this is a video you will want to watch. If you are not, you don't have to, but as always, you are more than welcome to. And just as I've said before in my other videos, if any questions, feel free to leave them as a comment on this video or send me an email. If you're one of my students, you have my email. Um, so feel free to send me any questions you might have. Also, to everyone, to all my students that see this video, um, I'm still not getting a whole lot of responses back from the email that I sent out at the beginning of all of this. So those of you that have emailed me back, I very much appreciate that. But a lot of you I still haven't heard from, and I need to hear back from you guys so that I know that you are getting my emails and you're seeing this. So if you are seeing this, thank you. Um, tell your friends, tell your classmates, they need to get on here. So, okay, let's go ahead and get into it. Today we're going to be going over air pollution. Now, just like in my other videos, I'm going to be following with the notes that I sent home in the packets, or you picked up at the school, or however you got your hand on the packet from the school. Um, we are going to be going over the first part of the air pollution um, section. So, um, let's go ahead and get into it. Air pollution, what is it? Well, air is made up mostly of nitrogen and oxygen. Mostly nitrogen. You know, if you might think, oh, well, our air is mostly oxygen. No, it's not, and you should be glad that it's not, because oxygen is one of the necessary requirements for combustion, aka fire. And if our air was mostly oxygen, would not be a great place to live. If our air was mostly oxygen, if we had an, if instead of the percent of our air that is nitrogen, if it was oxygen, the moment somebody flicked a lighter, struck a match, made a spark of some sort, massive fireball. So be glad that our air is not mostly oxygen. You would not want to live here if it was. So, but it is mostly nitrogen and oxygen. It also includes small amounts of argon, carbon dioxide, and water vapor. When harmful substances build up in the air, it is called air pollution. And we, living in the Ohio Valley, we see plenty of sources of air pollution here. That's just a fact of our area. You look up and down the river, you see the different chemical plants, power plants, and they're burning off and putting out those big clouds. That's air pollution. Now there are two main types of pollutants. There are primary pollutants and secondary pollutants. Now a primary pollutant is pollution that is put into the air by human activity directly. For example, soot from smoke. Whenever you have a campfire and that smoke that you're putting up into the air, that's air pollution. Now, sure, just one little campfire, you're not going to make a whole lot of air pollution there. But that is a type of air pollution that goes up into the air, and it is caused by human activity. Now, there are also what are called secondary pollutants, which we'll get into later on in the class. But a secondary pollutant is pollution that happens when two primary pollutants mix together. Um, Once again, primary pollutants are things that humans directly put into the air through a variety of different ways. The next thing we're going to talk about are the sources of primary pollution. Power plants and vehicles are sources of carbon monoxide, a primary pollutant. And these are going to be major sources of air pollution. Burning fuel causes many other pollutants to enter the air, such as nitrogen oxide and sulfur dioxide. And burning fuel is something that we do every day, whether it's by driving a car or riding a bus or whenever we go to the grocery store and we purchase something that was delivered by a truck, fuel had to be burned to get that product to the store. So we burn fuel all the time. That's just a fact of our modern society. So that's why a lot of major areas are trying to cut down on the number of vehicles on the road, either by public transportation, like a bus system or a subway, or they encourage people to walk to work if possible, or ride a bicycle or something. It is to cut down on these primary pollutants. Motor vehicle emissions is the next topic. And 1/3 of all air pollution comes from gasoline engines. Now this, like I said, these are cars, trucks, buses, the vehicles that we use to get around every day. Now, the Clean Air Act of 1970 gave the EPA stands for Environmental Protection Agency, the authority to regulate vehicle emissions in the United States. Um, the EPA gets a lot of attention, especially in our state. And a lot of people in the state of West Virginia are not major fans of the EPA because the EPA, well, we live in West Virginia. What's the major economy of West Virginia? Coal. Coal is, let's face it, it's a dirty product, meaning that there's a lot of pollution that comes from coal. So the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, their authority is to make laws and regulations, or well, to carry them out, I should say, to protect the environment, hence Environmental Protection Agency. It's their job to make sure that different businesses and companies and things like that are following these regulations to protect the environment. The Clean Air Act of 1970 was what gave the EPA the authority to regulate vehicle emissions. So if you are a person that likes to work on cars, you have on any sort of modern vehicle, you're going to have a filter in your exhaust that's going to catch a lot of pollution. And that is a requirement for vehicles to have those due to an act of the EPA to cut down on vehicle emissions. The Clean Air Act of 1970 also required the elimination of lead in gasoline. So if you've ever been at the gas station and you saw on the pumps where it said unleaded, you might be confused and be like, well, what does that even mean? Well, before this Clean Air Act, there was lead in gasoline. Lead is a very toxic metal for life, for us, for animals, plants. They don't like lead. Yeah, I'm sure people here have heard of lead poisoning. Well, that's what you get due to exposure from lead. And lead was in gasoline, then it was going to be burned up in the car engines and then put out into the air. People were breathing in, and people were getting very bad sick. And I have a video that whenever we get back in the classroom, I will show you that talks about this. It is part of the Cosmos series of videos that I know some of you are really big fans of. So whenever we get back into the classroom, we'll watch that one day. But if you've ever wondered where that unleaded gasoline you've seen at the gas station comes from, why it says that, it is due to this law. Okay, moving right along, the next topic is the California Zero Emission Vehicle Program. Now, this is a program in the state of California that aims to reduce vehicle emissions. A zero-emission vehicle is a vehicle with no exhaust of any kind. So, these are going to be your smaller electric cars. Types of these are electric vehicles, hydrogen fuel, and methanol fuel cells. These are all alternative fuel sources that don't use a combustion engine to power it. It uses batteries or electric or these other types of fuels. These sorts of vehicles do not produce any sort of exhaust, so these are going to be very favored by places like the EPA and different environmental protection groups because they don't put off any exhaust, they don't pollute the air. So um, I feel that as the technology gets better, we're going to see more and more of these vehicles. And my opinion, I'm all for it. You guys all know I drive a truck. I drive a Silverado. But I like these zero emission vehicles. I know some of you may not, you like your big trucks, and that's perfectly fine. I like my truck. But I also really like the zero emission vehicles, and I think as the technology gets better and more uh, widely available, we're going to see more and more of it. Okay, next up, we're going to be talking about industrial air pollution, and this is something that we are going to see a lot of in our area. Power plants and factories make up 2/3 of all sulfur dioxide and 1/3 of all nitrogen oxides that pollute the air. Now, this is the air pollution, like I said, coming from power plants, chemical plants, factories, etc. And you're going to see a lot of that in our area simply because our area is so um, invested in making electric. The power plants, we see them right here along Route 2. We got the Mitchell Power Plant and Covestro, it's a chemical plant, but they all produce these emissions and it pollutes the environment. So the next topic is how are we going to regulate this air pollution? What are we doing about it? Well, the Clean Air Act that I mentioned a moment ago requires scrubbers or other pollution control devices. Now, these are devices that are supposed to filter out the vast majority of the pollutants that these places put off. A scrubber cleans pollution from industrial exhaust by forcing the gas through a filter and a blast of water to wash out pollutants. So it's like putting it through a real heavy filter. Just like how if you have a coffee pot, you put that filter, and you put your grounds on top, and you put the water down through, that filter keeps the ground up coffee beans from getting into the coffee that you're going to drink. Well, this scrubber does the exact same thing. It only lets certain things through, and then it catches a lot of that pollution for it to be disposed of in proper ways. If you have the digital version of my notes, which I'll put a link in the description of this video for you to get the digital version of my notes. I have a video. If you go to this slide and you click this right here, it will link you to a video that talks about how scrubbers work. So whenever you're done with this video, go ahead and give that a watch, and it will tell you how these scrubbers work. It's pretty neat stuff. Okay, coming up on the last bit of information here for today, and we have smog. Smog is a major issue, especially in heavily urban areas. We don't have as big of a smog issue here as other places in the world do. This is mostly for your major cities. Smog is air pollution over urban areas that reduces vision. Now, smog can be so bad in some areas that it actually is a cloud. Like how we have really foggy mornings here. Well, they have smoggy places. Car exhaust, air, and water vapor make smog. So if you think smog is a weird word, and we're talking about smoke and fog. That's how they get the word and put it together. That's the smog we're talking about. We're not talking about the dragon from the Hobbit movies. I never watched those movies. I thought they were kind of boring. That's not for this video. Los Angeles, Denver, Phoenix, and Beijing suffer from smog. Those are all the major cities that have major smog issues. But we will say that, and you can look this up, it has been documented, that due to the current situation in the world, and it's a scary situation, um, but one of the unforeseen positives of having so many things locked down is these urban areas, their smog that they have currently is the lightest that it's been in years, simply because people aren't out as much as they normally are. We don't have as many emissions. So, one of the positives that can be gleaned from such a bad situation as the world is in today is that it is showing what can happen if we don't produce as many emissions. Um, Beijing, I'll talk about for just a moment here. Beijing, the version of the environmental agencies that they have in China are showing that the air quality in Beijing is the best it's been in years. Now, of course, it is a terrible situation over there right now for the health of the people. And do not misconstrue what I'm saying. I am not saying that the world is in a good place right now at all. I would never say that. But all I am saying is that the air quality has gone up in these major urban areas. And it's not just Beijing, it's other major urban areas are saying this too, because they don't have as many emissions that are being produced because people just aren't going out like they are, like they used to. So due to this, they're producing less emissions and there's less smog, and it is actually helping the air quality. Now, just like I said a moment ago about the scrubbers, if you go on the digital version of my notes, go to this slide right here, click this link. Oh, that one. Sorry. Click that link right there. It will take you to a video about smog. Okay, guys, I think that's going to be it for today. Like I said, this video was about air pollution, and that is the next chapter that we're going to be getting into in class. The digital version of my notes, like always, I'll put a link in the video description. And I want to thank you all for watching, and leave a comment down below in the comment section on this video. You know, I want to see how many people are actually watching these videos. So, um, tell me what you've been doing. What have you been doing during our time out of the classroom? Um, have you been actually doing the work that was sent home to you, or have you been just napping? You know, I know whenever I ask you guys what you do on the weekends, a lot of times you're like, oh, sleep or watch TV or whatever. I mean, just leave me a comment that lets me know that you watched this video, okay? So, um, share this with your classmates. Let them know that this is out there. Um, and that'll be all for today, guys. Okay. Thanks for watching, and I hope I see you back in the classroom real soon.